It is a pleasure. It is a pleasure for me to be the moderator for today LSPR Omni session. First of all, I would like to say welcome to our honorable guest speaker for today, Ms. Anna Ruby Pista, and to all Londoners who are participating in this seminar with the topic Corporate Social Responsibility. Before we start our session for today, I think from our Prodi, Ms. Pasnovel would like to say a few words.
Thank you. Hi, Anna. Hi, Aurelia. Hi, Anna. Welcome. Welcome back for you because I'm new to your session and I'm looking forward to your session. Thank you so much for making your time for us today. And hi, guys, LSPR students and maybe lecturers coming here today. First of all, I would like to talk on behalf of the Faculty of Communication, especially PRDC Prodi, PRDC major. Welcome to everyone here. As you know that Omni, as part of LSPR commitment in improving and upgrading our quality in education by having guest lecturer from international university partner. So I would like to invite everyone here to listen and pay attention and learn something from Anna today, because Miss Anna is so expert on her field and she will share a lot of things from of expertise in CSR. I believe that will and of course your skill to challenge yourself to see the international system not practical. If you have any questions or concerns, Miss Anna, come to your idea and I hope you all have a very productive session today with her. Stay in touch, stay online, and don't forget to turn your on. So Miss Anna, guys are not as well as make notes if you feel like you need to make notes, because this will be another assignment for your CSR subject. And most of all, I hope you enjoy your session this afternoon with Miss Anna and have fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Novel. Before we start our session, I believe Ms. Sasa Yusariahya is already in this class. Hi, Ms. Sasa.
Hello, Ita.
Hi.
Nice to see you again. And hello, students. And Miss Anna, welcome to our CSR class.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sasa. I would like to kindly request for all of you to turn on your camera, please, and also mute your microphone throughout the discussion period. During our session, you could also put your questions in the chat box, and then we will discuss it on the Q&A session after the presentation. Okay, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Anna to start the presentation.
All right. Thank you very much, Ita. First off, I'd like to congratulate LSPR on its 30th anniversary. I just found out this morning that you are celebrating your 30th anniversary. Congratulations.
Yes, yay.
Yeah, congratulations to all the great people behind the great success of LSPR. And of course, I am privileged to again be a speaker. It has always been a pleasure, being invited here, because it is it's my way of giving back, especially to the students who are actually excited to be part of this industry that we call public relations, right? So yeah, I am sure that most of the students here would soon be 5 years, 10 years from now would be speaking just like me internationally, because I believe that LSPR produces the right kinds of practitioners, not only in Southeast Asia, but in the world. So congratulations. And I'd like to welcome all the students. This would be a freewheeling, discussion where you could, ask me questions anytime, because this is quite, technical and at the same time heavy discussion, because I was told that we have to talk about CSR in a global perspective. So I hope that you will learn from my presentation, and I'm excited to share it with everyone. So I'll share my screen right now. Okay, for a while. Share. And then give me a minute. And there you go. So I'd like to greet everybody. Good day. Salamat siyang. Magandang araw. So I hope I pronounce it right. The good thing about Ask Malik Race, there are so many language or words in the Filipino, that is somewhat related and somewhat the same meaning in Jakarta and in Malaysia. So I sort of like study a little bit of Bahasa, but that's what, like 30 years ago, and I forgot most. But somehow, if I stay in your country, somehow I could sort of like understand a little bit. So I'm here to greet you a good day and salamat siyang. So I'll start my presentation. I was given the topic um, CSR in a global perspective. And so before presenting that, I'll give you these 4 things, as we end the 45-minute session. First, I'll give an overview. What is CSR? Because I know that you are third-year students, and I know that you have sort of like came across studying CSR already, but it's good that we review again. So I'll give you a little overview about CSR. And then, of course, we need to know the current state of CSR, not only in Asia, but globally. So where are we when it comes to CSR? What's the latest trends, etc.? What are the things that's being sought after by people working for the industry, those that are making CSR projects and campaigns? What's the current state? And of course, I'd also talk about the challenges. Yeah, it's not good that we will pass on the challenges, because it's important that these students know the challenges that's in front of them in terms of like CSR, or corporate social responsibility. And after we discuss challenges, we will discuss prospect in the future. What is the future of CSR? So briefly, I'd like to quote Bill Ford. He says, creating a strong business and building a better world are not conflicting goals. They are both essential ingredients for long-term success. Bill Ford is the executive chairman of Ford Motor Company. And as you all know, it is a very successful American brand worldwide. What is CSR? Corporate social responsibility is defined as a continuing commitment by business to contribute to the economic development while improving the quality of life of the workforce and their families, as well as the community and society at large. So in a nutshell, CSR is the business's commitment to contribute to the economic development, and then afterwards, expecting to improve quality of life of the workforce or the ones working for that business and their families. And not only that it stops from their families, but to the whole community as well. So that's what is CSR. Now, CSR, a little bit of history. CSR can be traced back to the late 1800s when Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller first challenged their fellow millionaire friends to support social causes. So who are these two people? During the Industrial Revolution, let's go back to Industrial Revolution, where people are just starting to work and earn money after the long war and the long chaos worldwide, there came the Industrial Revolution, and the two main people that really made a name during the time is Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller. Andrew Carnegie is the Scottish-American industrialist and philanthropist. He led the expansion of American steel industry and became one of the richest American in the history. His last 18 years was very fascinating because before he died, 18 years before he died, he gave away 350 million. Nowadays, it's roughly 5.5 billion. Almost 90% of his fortune to charities, foundation, and universities. He is the author of The Gospel of Wealth and called the right to use their wealth to improve society, support progressive taxation, and stimulated wave of philanthropy. So Carnegie and Rockefeller started CSR. Now, who's John Rockefeller? If Carnegie is the one that produces steel, who's John Rockefeller? John Rockefeller is the Stand Oil co-founder. What is Stand Oil, the company? It stands for Chevron or Cartex and Exxon, where we got all our oils. You know, John Rockefeller is a business magnate and philanthropist. America's first billionaire, founded the Stand and Oil Company. He is the richest American during the time because he nearly have 2% of the national economy when he was leading that company. So these two wealthy people, way back in 1800, started convincing their fellow millionaire friends, hey, let's support social causes. So as a background, CSR started from there. Almost a century later, the concept of social contract between business and society laid out 3 responsibilities. 1 is to create jobs and economic growth. 2, provide fair treatment to employees and customers. And 3, contribute to the community. So when you say CSR or social contract, they call it, these are the 3 main things that's being done behind, the claim of social contract. 1, they create jobs. And then if you create job, it should translate to economic growth. Now, not only that it creates job and economic growth, you should provide fair treatment to employees and customers, and of course, contribute to the community. As defined, that is CSR. So, however, CSR has since expanded its focus to become the cultural values that inform how a company does business and social good. Later on, I will discuss this further. During the time, traditionally, when you say CSR, what are the types of corporate social responsibility? You can just identify it into 4. Number 1, philanthropic responsibility. I think, simply put, philanthropic responsibility is giving back to the community. And I think you are fully aware of those small things that we do in the community, like tree planting, beach or seashore cleaning, clean up movement, anything on the environment protection. So that's philanthropic responsibility, or giving back to charity, giving back what you have to the most people, your shareholder or stakeholders that needs you the most. Ethical responsibility. CSR also speaks of ethical responsibility. A good CSR is ethically correct. If it's not ethically correct, then it should not be, would not fall under corporate social responsibility, because it should be ethical. When you do CSR, it should be ethical. Number 3, legal responsibility. When you do CSR, you should obey the law. It should have a legal bearing. You cannot just think of a philanthropic effort without thinking about how ethical you could execute it, and without undermining the law. So, and the last but not the least is economic responsibility. So when you do a CSR, it should translate to profit. It should translate to the well-being of the community. It should translate to good, result within the community that you're doing CSR with. So traditionally, these are the types of corporate social responsibility in a nutshell. Nowadays, CSR is heavily about mindset and culture. I will explain this later. Social responsibility plays a starring role in that culture. It's no longer about what's in it for me. As you can see, the 4 types of CSR, it is the one that answers what's in it for me. But today, employees want to know what they're going through in their jobs to help others rescue the environment and systemic racism. Younger generations, I call them Gen Zs right now. Younger generations of candidates weigh company culture more heavily than employers might realize. So CSR is the framework for the culture and an answer to those questions. Okay. You might ask, why is CSR important in the global business community? The answer is CSR plays a crucial role in the company's brand perception, attractiveness to customers, employees and investors, talent retention, and overall business success. A company can implement 4 types of CSR efforts. In a nutshell, 1 is environmental initiatives, 2 charity work, 3 ethical labor practices, and volunteer projects. So, how is CSR related to globalization? Globalization plays a significant role in driving the evolution of the CSR discourse and practice across developed and developing countries. The differential development of CSR across contexts is pervasive but undeniably relates to the internationalization, modernization, and the globalization process. Simply put, any CSR of big companies should be adaptable, should be something that is applicable to each country that will implement it. So how to do that? You do that globally. You just don't do a generic campaign that speaks of one region or one situation. It should be tailor-fitted to each country, but at the same time, it should speak of the concerns globally. Okay, so the internationalization, modernization, and the globalization process is now at this point applicable if you are heading or doing a CSR. You can no longer make a CSR campaign that is not riding on these 3 things, because the success of a CSR is something that can be adapted, can be implemented, and localized and tailor-fitted in each country. Because right now, for example, if you are Chevron, Chevron doesn't only exist in the Philippines. It exists in Malaysia. It exists in different countries of the world. It's a very big company. And therefore, the CSR that they should be creating should be generic, but can be localized and implemented basing on the culture, economy of the countries it will be implemented on. So it is very important to take note that your CSR should relate to, number 1, internalization, modernization, and the globalization process. Okay, this is important. What are the 5 driving forces of CSR? Okay, the 5 driving forces of CSR are growing affluence. Number 1, CSR becomes more relevant as economies grow and stabilize. Therefore, the greatest attention to CSR is found in developed countries. Yeah, most of the ideation and the general foundation of a CSR, of course, is being done in the mother company or the main branch of the company. And usually, most of the big companies can implement this, because if you're a small company, you can only do it in a smaller scale. But if you are a big company, you can do it globally. So it is needed that you do CSR because, as it says here, the greatest attention to CSR is found in developed countries, and it becomes more relevant as economies grow and stabilize. All right. Number 2, ecological sustainability. What are the driving forces? Number 2, ecological sustainability. An increase in general affluence and changing social expectation is enhanced by a growing concern for the environment. As you can see, there are tons and tons of campaigns and CSR projects being done worldwide. And it's all, focused on climate change, ecological sustainability, about the environment, about the planet, stuff like that. Number 3, globalization. Globalization has had considerable impacts. First, the increased wealth and power of multinational corporations has led to questions on decreased authority of the nation state, especially in developing area. So all things are being done globally and internationally. So you can no longer, limit a certain CSR in a certain country anymore. It has to be done globally. Number 4, the free flow of information. In the Internet of Things, especially after the pandemic, you can really get information right here, right now, 24/7. The growing influence of global media conglomerates make sure that any CSR lapses by companies are brought rapidly to the attention of the worldwide public, often instantaneously. So if you are doing it right, then it's good. Everybody would know it. At the snap of a finger, 24/7, you would know the result if it's good or bad. Now, if it's bad, then it can break or it can ruin your reputation in a snap of a finger. So it's very important that when you do CSR, you consider that it's gonna be the Internet of Things, and everything is being spread like wildfire. And if you don't know how to utilize this and use this to your advantage, then it's gonna be giving you bad result. Last but not the least is brand. Brands today are the focal point of corporate success, and much of the health of the brand depends on public perception of the corporation. Narrowing this down, when you say McDonald's, for example, that's a brand, and what are the things that they're doing for CSR? In the Philippines and in other parts, I believe, there's this no straw movement and no plastic cups, for example. So by doing those simple acts, they are being tagged as a good company. They are being patronized, and the public perception of that corporation is very positive. So what are the things that you need to consider? The driving forces of CSR? You should, very much focus on these 5 driving forces. I'm sorry. Okay. Which concerns can CSR programs you can apply to? CSR comes in many forms. The most common programs are about improving labor policies, participating in fair trade, diversity, equity, and inclusion, charitable giving on a global scale, community and virtual volunteering, corporate policies and that benefit the environment, socially and environmentally conscious investment. So for example, you're working in a company and that company is wanting you to come up with a CSR program for them. These are the list of the programs that you can, study and choose from that is relevant to the organization. For example, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is pretty much being used in the United States for most brands because they're into covering the social culture and challenges. So most of the companies like Nike, McDonald's, name it, They have ridden the diversity, equity, and inclusion. So in your country, in Jakarta, or in my country, in the Philippines, if I would be able to ask to do a CSR campaign, I would think, which among these bulleted forms should I use as a reference, and which CSR campaign can I do that best suit the company that I belong? So there are too many. There are diversity and equity and inclusion, charitable giving on a global scale. So first world countries giving, charitable projects to the third world countries. So this is the thing that is ongoing right now. So as a practitioner, you should know which among these bullet points you should consider for the company you work for. Okay. A socially responsible company is important to everyone, especially to millennials and Generation Z. They believe companies must invest in improving society or look for solutions that assist in those improvements. Companies must share what they're doing to make a positive impact. Showcasing your efforts is key. It is important to learn how to market your projects. And last but not the least, to better put your narrative, the better it is for people to realize that they need to support you and your cause. Okay. What's the current state of CSR right now at this point? According to Fortune Global 500 firms, spend roughly 20 billion on corporate social responsibility per year. So you can just imagine, why are they spending this much money for CSR? And this is narrowed down to Fortune Global 500 firms, meaning the affluent companies. They spend so much. Question is why? Massive companies take outspoken positions on diversity, inclusions, education, and the environment. Changes in consumer attitude have become a key driver for increasing CSR activities. So going back, why do they spend 20 billion? Because the consumers right now, which is the brand's target market, have become a key driver for increasing these activities, as well as increasing pressure from employees who want to work for reputable, ethical, and charitable businesses. Some of the most popular CSR trends in the area of corporate social responsibility include increased transparency, investment in green technologies, local community and employee engagement, and diversity and inclusion initiatives. Business end to change from time to time, especially when the whole world is affected by unexpected events. Think about COVID-19 pandemic, the war, and climate change. Because of this, a CSR campaign tends to evolve. Okay. And if it is evolving, what are the current trends in CSR? Increased transparency. Right now, if you do a CSR, you should not only be answerable to what's in it for me. You should do it with increased transparency, meaning you should provide information in such a way that your stakeholders involved can obtain proper insight into the issues that are relevant to them. Transparency is a necessary condition for CSR, meaning it is all welcoming, all embracing approach. Again, it's an all welcoming, all embracing approach. For increased transparency, you should embrace your stakeholder, your target public, the one affected by your CSR, the one you're targeting for your CSR. You should be transparent with them. They should be involved in creating your CSR. They should have a voice in doing it. So it's not only that you go to communities, it's not only that you talk to your employees, but you make sure that you hear them, you listen to them, and when you do the CSR, their inputs and the value they put into it is obvious and is part of the CSR that you did. Okay? Number 2, investment in green technology. which is based on three aspects: people, planet, and profit. A good CSR has to consider three bottom line concepts: people, planet, profit. Three P's. Okay. When you're thinking of doing green or uh, taking care of a CSR that's in green technology, you should be dealing with primarily people, planet, and profit. It's no longer that you do things for people and protect the planet. Important also to note that it should create profit. Okay. The only time that you could consider a good PR or a successful PR is if you meet these three for investment in green technology. Okay. Another trend would be employee and local community engagement. Working with the community demonstrates commitment, improves company reputation, and makes it easier to recruit, retain employees. Okay. A good local government unit relationship also help. Okay. And then last but not the least, diversity and inclusion, or DEI. Applying its principles can help companies understand community, forge authentic relationship with stakeholders. So if you are to ask to create a CSR campaign at this point in time, these are the four things that you should consider in working on that particular CSR campaign. Again, should be transparent. It should be, you should focus on investment in green technology that focuses on people, planet, and profit. You should also create an employee and local community engagement. And of course, diversity and inclusion. Again, you can select any of this that is appropriate to the company that you work for. Okay, what are the challenges of CSR today after talking about the current state? What are the challenges? Okay, as I mentioned, CSR nowadays should be transparent. There is a disclosure of information among the stakeholders. Okay, transparency means winning the trust and loyalty of your customers. To do that, your company needs to show up as authentic, transparent, and purposeful. I love the Gen Zs because they are very much into this nowadays. They want a campaign, a commercial, or a marketing effort that is authentic, transparent, and purposeful. My 10-year-old son actually is pretty much into this. As you all know, Jollibee is a good brand here, and McDo is the competitor. But you know what? Not for colonial mentality, but because of what they do. McDonald's campaigns for no plastic cup and no straw movement. And my son would rather buy McDonald's because of those initiatives of McDonald's rather than the popular Jollibee. You know, I love Jollibee. I love the taste of Jollibee, but you know how challenging it is to get the stakeholders thought and embrace your brand. So it is important that you are very transparent. Your campaign is authentic and it is purposeful. There is a result. There is a bottom line when you do the CSR. After all, corporations can no longer hide ethical or unethical practices from society as humans live in an information-driven economy. So it's the same with anything, you know. You can no longer hide anything right now. So it's better that the companies are transparent and come up with disclosure among its stakeholders, because at the end of the day, people will know it. At the end of the day, they will find out. So when you do a CSR, unlike it like 20, 30, 40 years ago, you just do a CSR about those four CSR kinds, and then that's it. People would just ask, what's in it for me? But nowadays, you have to stress on authenticity, transparency, and it should be purposeful. Business will always be under heavy surveillance for any praised or frowned upon practices. once a whistle is blown, the entire world would know about it almost immediately. A classic example of which is, for example, when Kobe Bryant died, if you're awake at the time that he died, you would know whichever country that Kobe Bryant died. You can check in the FB, Instagram, not even a good source of news, but just for those. And you would know 24/7. So how much more for companies that are doing things for their brand, the CSR for the brand. Mind you, the entire world would know about it almost immediately. If you do good, the world would know it immediately. If you do bad, then the world would know it immediately as well. Number two, aside from transparency, when you are creating a CSR, it should be S, sustainable. Okay, sustainability focus on the idea that there is a severe decline in the planet's resources and that companies should be creating business plans that integrate sustainability for the environment. This means that CSR efforts should emphasize growth and profitability through intentional business practices in 3 areas of society. The goal is to provide long-term value for stakeholders without compromising the triple bottom line rule: people, planet, and profitability. As you can see, most companies right now, you are a student, but I think in LSPR, they practice the, Google Drive way of exchanging information rather than printing so many items in a bond paper. You wastage of ink and paper equates to 3 being killed, on a daily basis. So this means that when you do your product, you speak of sustainability. When you do something, it should be sustainable. So you will hear a lot of campaigns or CSR on protecting the environment, not cutting the trees or trying to save the trees and all that. And that would equate to not using too much paper, not burning plastics, stuff like that. So again, a company is well recognized with this if they do a CSR that is sustainable. Number 3 important one is corporate culture. When you do a CSR, you should look into the people working for that company. CSR involves not only looking outwards to the community, but also directing social investment inwards with initiative like employee volunteerism, engaging the staff to do something positive for the community, internal education and social programs, as well as the promotion of environmental campaigns. The classic example that I can give here is that of Chevron, because Chevron is our client. For the past 10 years, we have this Week of Caring month, which falls on a September. It means 5 days of doing CSR works. And by doing that, we incorporate the culture of Chevron people, the employees. What do they like doing? Oh, they like, there are campaigns that focuses on teaching the students or education because they're into that. There's a campaign on preventing tuberculosis because that's the output of, the pollution that, that is being emitted by gasolines in the environment. So we think of every year, we think of things that is aligned with the culture of Chevron in thinking of what CSR to do within that September Week of Caring. So because CSR involves what? The people that works for that company. So you should analyze what is the culture of this company. What are the kinds of employees that work for them? And then you teach them the volunteerism and you give them a campaign, a CSR that they would love to embrace. Not that they would only love it, but they will embrace it fully. So it is something that resonates with their culture and morality. So it is important that you study corporate culture in doing your CSR. It involves employees and promoting corporate culture of social responsibility not only strengthens a company's external business, it also fosters a greater sense of employee loyalty and commitment to the organization. So for example, if you're working in a company that does not, care about the environment, and you are a lover of protecting the environment, would you love, stay working in that kind of company? No. So the companies are using this to have a retention of employees, and they are satisfied and they are doing good, contributing to the community, and in the long run, they would be looked up as a good company or as a good brand. So it's like a domino effect. You have to make sure that the CSR you create for the company that you work with marries the culture of that company, of the people working for that company. And last but not the least, connecting CSR to value chain and profitability. If you cannot measure them, you shouldn't do them. Okay? So you have to ensure that when you do and create a CSR plan, it is measurable and then it's profitable. The more value an organization creates, the more profitable it is likely to be. Later on, I will give an example of this in the Philippine setting. When a firm provides more value to its customers, it will build its competitive edge. Socially responsible companies cultivate positive brand recognition, increase customer loyalty, and attract top-tier employees. These elements are among the key to achieving increased profitability and long-term financial success. That's why it is vital to connect CSR to the value chain. All right. So studies show that companies that fully integrate CSR into their operations can expect good financial returns on their investment. Companies integrating CSR have also been shown to increase sales as well as reduce employee turnover. If people are not, moving from one company to the other, then it's a good output, right? And it would translate to bigger income, and bigger income would make, translate to profitability. And then people would have, if the company or a brand is profitable and the things that their employees are doing are profitable enough, then it would create what? More employees to have a job. It would create jobs. So it is important that you connect the CSR that you do to the people, to the value chain, and at the end of the day, you think about profitability. Okay, so those are the challenges. Now, what's the future of CSR? The future holds exciting prospects for corporate social responsibility. CSR, based on the research that I did, will play an increasingly important role in how companies approach business and engage communities as suggested by today's CSR trends and innovations. Forward-leaning approaches to social justice issues are now being considered by companies due to societal issues like environment management, efficiency, good governance, gender balance, and stakeholder engagement. In summary, what's the future of CSR? Most of the companies are predicted to be working on these three things: climate change, social justice, and technology. CSR therefore covers a broad spectrum of issues that must be taken into account in business conduct, like working conditions, human rights, the environment, preventing corruption, corporate governance, diversity, equality, and inclusion, occupational integration, consumer interest, and taxes. So, if you want to know the future of CSR, just look into these bulleted things, no? These are the things where you could focus your CSR on. And I know that most of you can relate to the diversity, equality, and inclusion. So I have here a 12-minute video that I will show for you to see how diversity, equality, and inclusion works well and build a company via a CSR.
In today's episode, we're talking about the differences between diversity, equity, inclusion, and corporate responsibility, and how they interact with each other in the workplace. Let's make a social impact. Hi everyone, I'm Carl. Welcome to the Social Impact Show, where CSR professionals get the latest strategies and tips to help them scale and grow their CSR and goodness programs. Now remember, if this is your first time on this channel and you want to get the latest strategies from the experts, hit the subscription button below, hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. So today I'm joined by Janelle St. Omer, Regional Vice President with Benevity, and we're going to talk about DE&I and CSR. So Janelle, how would, I guess, companies marry the differences between diversity, equity, inclusion, and corporate social responsibility? Because for some people, I would imagine they would fit under the same group or under the same person, right?
They can. I think historically, they have been two completely separate functions, usually diversity, equity, and inclusion sitting in your HR or your people and culture team, and corporate social responsibility either sitting in a team in and of itself or being a part of your corporate communications or marketing, more from that external standpoint. And I think that that's okay. I think, but there is definitely alignment between the two functions. If you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and some of the goals that a company might have around attracting and retaining talent from diverse populations, the community partnerships that you might have in your CSR program can actually serve as a support mechanism for you in that. So as an example, if you want to be known as a company that is very diverse for a particular ethnicity, let's just say, so if you want to be known as a company that is the company for Hispanic individuals, then perhaps what you can do from a CSR or an employee giving, granting, and volunteering standpoint is have strategic corporate partnerships with organizations that are Latinx serving. So individuals from that community start to recognize your brand as a company that actually supports their community. So there definitely can be connections between CSR and DE&I. Another example, employee resource groups, which are typically supported by your DE&I team, which typically lives within your HR, your people functions, those employee resource groups will often have a community focus or a community pillar. So, a part of their mandate might be to bring together their employees within the context of their company, to continue to help to build out a diverse pipeline, to support and provide mentorship to your employees who are of that particular employee resource group. But another area can be to mentor individuals who are of that particular group. So let's just talk about LGBTQ2+. Those individuals as part of your Pride group, because we are in Pride Month, perhaps they want to offer mentorship to individuals or to young people, who are LGBTQ2+. Or perhaps they want to then, have an employee grant fund that goes towards an organization that they're also supporting as an ERG. So, this is something that is part of your HR function, but there are community elements to it. And I think if you think of the purpose or the goals of both your DE&I programs and your CSR programs, ultimately both programs serve to have impact, whether that be internal impact in terms of employee engagement and really encouraging and fostering that sense of inclusion and belonging for your people, which fosters employee engagement overall and seeks to increase it, helping with retention, or doing that from the external standpoint where you're involving your employees in the community, which also fosters employee engagement and helps with talent acquisition and retention. Employees want to know that the company that they work for lives and aligns to their values, lives the passions that they have, it aligns to their purpose, or it helps them to at least it helps them to drive their personal passions, within the community and within the world. So, working for a company and being a part of an employee resource group that then allows me to give back to my community specifically from a CSR standpoint is a great brand story for any company. It's a great employee engagement story for any company. As a Black employee, I chair our Black employee network at Benevity, and the ability to come together with my Black colleagues for us to then mentor and do speed interviews for historical Black colleges, that's allowing me under our employee resource group program here at Benevity to then give back to my Black community. And that's something that's meaningful to me. So oftentimes there are these silos, and perhaps there can be that tension. I've heard the question around, does one cannibalize on the efforts of the other? But we used to at Benevity talk a lot about the sweet spot of the power of and we talked about that in terms of, employee giving and kind of company areas of focus versus employee passions. And I think that what we're seeing right now is the power of and also exists in diversity, equity, and inclusion and CSR. There doesn't need to be that tension or that fight for resourcing or for budget, but they really can serve to complement one another and to drive the goals that each of those particular areas or teams has, in a very strategic way by your time, talent, and resources that you have available.
So as a CSR professional, it's probably easier if you have, your counterpart, your DE&I counterpart. But what if you're a CSR professional in an organization that doesn't have, I guess, a formalized diversity, equity, inclusion program or group? How would you go about getting some of those things started?
Well, I think it's really looking at the culture of your organization, looking at your population, looking at the groups of employees who work at your company, and really recognizing that perhaps there is a need or desire, getting feedback from your employees to recognize, where do they see any gaps in terms of their employee experience, and then thinking about your talent acquisition strategy, and are there gaps within that strategy as well. And bringing all of those together to then identify, are there areas of focus that you should have from a CSR standpoint with that DE&I lens? And you absolutely can be a CSR professional who is driving DE&I, and you can be driving that from a community standpoint. You can also be driving that from an employee engagement standpoint, even from a brand standpoint internally. So I think when you think about your company overall, your values, your culture, and what you stand for, I think there's a real opportunity to encourage and foster that sense of inclusion and belonging within your company in how you give, the decisions that you make in terms of charities that you include in your employee giving campaigns, as an example. Even things like not having minimums, for employee giving. A lot of companies historically have had a threshold where perhaps they have a minimum donation an employee needs to make before it's matched, or they have a threshold around, the number of hours an employee needs to complete before they can get a volunteer reward. If you think of that from a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens, recognizing that not all employees sit at the same point along the spectrum, an employee might not have the time to volunteer 40 hours in the course of a year to get $500. Maybe what they can do is do 10 hours of volunteering, and perhaps you're then going to reward them from an hourly perspective. So, it doesn't need to be as blatant as having a formalized DE&I program to think of inclusion and what that means in terms of all of your policies, procedures, and practices, and how you are casting as wide a net as possible to involve all of your employees and really being inclusive, as opposed to, things that you might have set up within your programs that are actually exclusive.
And remember, if you're getting value from this video, we'd really appreciate you hitting that like button. And the question of the day for you is, are you in an organization that has both a DE&I and CSR role? And how have those two groups worked with each other? And if you are in one of those roles, how have you reached out and worked with your counterpart? Let us know in the comment section below. So Janelle, where do you see CSR and DE&I moving moving together in the future, right? Because I know these roles are probably either new, maybe not so much for CSR, for D&I, maybe there's new people in those roles. How do you see both these roles working together, and what do you see some of the trends that we're seeing in 2021 and beyond?
I think we're going to continue to see them evolve together. I think we're going to continue to see, companies who are focus on de-siloing their functions. They're looking at employee engagement and employee experience from a holistic standpoint. So they're actually thinking about the intersections between their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and their CSR programs. I think that we're going to continue to see, companies double down on this era of corporate social justice and corporate social activism, really turning some of these moments into movements and allowing and harnessing the power and passion of their employees as it relates to getting involved in the things that they're passionate about. I think that we're going to continue to see, more diverse hiring and really companies thinking about their population and their workforce and what that means as to how they show up for the rest of their employees and how they show up, from a public standpoint in terms of their external stakeholders and their community. I think we're going to continue to see, fostering this open culture of conversations and of transparency, and companies really thinking about their goals as it relates to some of these pieces. I actually saw a company that published a diversity, equity, and inclusion report for the very first time. Historically, we've only seen corporate social responsibility reports at the end of the year. So I do think we're going to continue to see those two parallel tracks happen, where companies are, setting ambitious goals for themselves and then reporting on their progress and how they're tracking towards those goals year over year. I also think that we'll probably continue to see, unconscious bias, and how perhaps getting involved in community under the lens of CSR will actually help to kind of break down those silos and build that education and awareness for employees, where those biases can then be challenged and hopefully eliminated, and where things like microaggressions in the workplace, start to become eliminated as well. And I think the last piece is just on, employee mental health and well-being. I think that there's a very strong connection between CSR, DE&I, and employee mental health. And I do feel like practitioners in both of sort of these teams and in both areas of focus will really start to look at things not just looking at CSR from a DE&I perspective, but then overlaying employee mental health and well-being to that as well. What does it mean in terms of an employee who feels excluded at the workplace to their mental health and their well-being?
So if you want to watch our previous discussion on diversity, equity, inclusion, you got to check out this playlist here, where we talk about what it is and how to promote and address it in the workplace, as well as this playlist for other corporate social responsibility.
All right. So as you can see, they talk more about the very latest trend that, that captures the world in terms of doing things for the stakeholders. And for CSR, it's always connected and married to the diversity, equality, and inclusion. And the last part is the mental well-being. This is the trend right now after the pandemic. Before the pandemic, there's the DEI, but during the pandemic, there's a lot of CSR projects that is DEI plus mental health awareness. So I am giving you here some example of companies in the Philippines that made a remarkable CSR programs. I will not go through each one because I want to entertain your questions, but I'm gonna give you the PowerPoint presentation, this one that I prepared. So one of which is the biggest company in Manila. It's Aboitiz. Another one is Holcim. I think Holcim is also existing in Jakarta. And of course, there's San Miguel. Okay, probably I'll stop with San Miguel as an example. During the pandemic, they are, that San Miguel is a brewery corporation. They produce beers, the #1 beers, And during the pandemic, did you know that they created bottled water? It's not their business before, but they did it because there is a need for them to do that. And as well as packed foods, that you just put it in a microwave and then you can eat it immediately. It is not existing prior to pandemic. It is not being done by San Miguel Corporation, but because of pandemic, they saw the need to do this and contribute to the society. So I'll leave you here some of the classic and good example in Manila of how they did their CSR. First and foremost, most of the top 1,000 corporations here, always banking on preserving the environment, optimizing their resources in their businesses, and focusing on minimal waste and less pollution. So a lot of those are being done here. And classic example also of DEI with mental health awareness. One of the classic fashion brand in the Philippines called Bench is a pioneer in promoting LGBTQ. and mental health awareness. So actually, during the pandemic, they received a good appreciation of their stakeholders, and that increased their sales because once and for all, they were embraced by the Filipino buyers because of what they're doing to their workforce, to the community, and to the country as a whole. Okay. Why does CSR matter? So to summarize, if CSR is applied in good faith, CSR can have a huge impact on a company and its employees. Why? Because that culture sets the tone. It defines your company and its commitment. It serves a beacon of light for candidates looking for an employer that aligns with their values. And CSR also has a major impact on your how the company is perceived. So thank you very much. I think I'm now open for your questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Anna, for that informative and interesting presentation. We will now proceed to the Q&A session. If you have any questions, please raise your hand or just put it on the chat box, and then we will discuss it. Any questions? Or probably from Miss Sasai, do you have any question?
Okay, thank you, Ita. I'll just open, maybe others will follow after this. Thank you, Anna, for your presentation. What you have just shared with us is pretty much aligned with what the students have learned in class. So it's good for students to listen and learn again from you. My question is, since this CSR class that we have here is part of the public relation curriculum, what is the connection between CSR and communication or public relation? SPR practitioners, how to make sure that the communication of the CSR activities and CSR achievements are can gain credibility and can improve the image of the company.
All right.
So the communication part of the CSR.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's part of the early slides presented. You know, as communication practitioners, we are expected to be the one to create a good narrative for the CSR. We are the ones putting this together. We're the ones ideating. You know, as a communication practitioner, you are expected to, one, ideate. Number two, put it into writing and make it doable and workable. Present it to the brand, to the decision makers, and once presented, then it will be implemented. So it's our role as a PR practitioner is very, very relevant because we are the ones behind doing the CSR campaigns for most of these companies. We are the ones doing the research. We are the ones ideating. We are the ones putting together the campaign. And you have to have the knack of writing, really, as from a PR perspective, from a researcher perspective, from a typical, you know, employee perspective, behavioral perspective. So you have to be able to put it all into writing. And if you cannot do that, then you cannot do the job. Did you know that 99% of the CSR campaign being done worldwide, the things that we've mentioned, D&I, diversity and inclusions, Black Lives Matter, mental health, mental well-being, LGBTQ, all these things are narratives that are put together into writing, making it a presentation or a proposal to the owners of the companies, the affluent ones, to embrace and implement. So if you don't know the ins and outs and the practice of writing or the real writing or the procedure of doing a CSR campaign, then it won't flourish. So I should say that we are the ones doing this, so we should be knowledgeable in putting it together. And the basic thing in communication is knowing how to do it. So it's really us putting ourselves, immersing ourselves into this, coupled with the right communication skills and research skills and behavioral skills.
Thank you, Anna.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions from you, students? If not, I'm going to ask Anna. Okay. Anna, is that already a mandatory for companies in the Philippines to make CSR report?
I should say that for most top corporations, it is. It is because they have to have a connection. Way back then, it's already being implemented, but more so now, I think the change is more on what the focus, the kind of stakeholders that they would like to present the CSR on. Way back then, it is very much being implemented. People are pretty much expecting this, especially to the affluent companies, to the big ones, the multinational ones. It is a mandatory that they do CSR because they are the ones, affecting the community, the nation, and the people working. So it's a must that they connect with their employees, they connect with its people, they connect with the community, and that it transforms to profitability and economic well-being of the country. So it's a must. It is being implemented right now. Now, for small companies, a little bit here and there. Of course, they do their own philanthropic. Most of them are doing philanthropic work and charitable works and stuff, but not really fueled on sustainability and stuff. It's just a one-time thing, and it's okay. Because at the end of the day, it promotes their brands and businesses. However, for big corporations, it is mandatory. That's why at the Public Relations Society of the Philippines has this anvil, which is the Oscars of the Philippine, CSR, the awards given to great works put into corporate social responsibility, tactics, and strategy. So that's how the country is pretty much looking into this and pretty much how they value CSR.
Okay, thank you. Students, ini nggak ada yang mau nanya nih, bener nih. Please give us your questions while Miss Anna is still on this session. Anyway, I would like to ask another question, Anna. In developing CSR report, I believe that the storytelling is really important, right?
Yes.
Yeah. According to you and your experience, what do you think? How we can develop a good story? What should we do?
Okay, as I've said earlier, the basic thing that we need to do is the skills in communicating. That's number one. And number two, research. And of course, knowing the DNA of the people you're creating the CSR to. When you say DNA, what is their passion? What do they want? What would tick? What would click? What would the things that they will be embracing? So in creating that, those are the important ingredients, I should say, of a narrative. The narrative should move people, not only to the emotions, but that speaks of who they are, their moralities, their culture, their passion, exactly their DNA. So if you know the DNA of your stakeholders or who you meant the CSR should be geared towards that particular stakeholders, then you should really put so much time in research and put a good, way of writing it down, very good narrative that speaks of their DNA, that speak of the DNA of the stakeholders. So it all boils down to the narrative right now, especially the Gen Zs, they do not just want a campaign that is well written and you can just execute. They want something that is transparent. and there's a disclosure. They want something that is sustainable. It's not a one-time thing. So most Gen Zs and millennials, they know when you're just doing it for publicity and there's no sustainability, they will know that. So in terms of putting together your CSR, you write it very well that it encapsulates all these things in one. Again, the DNA of the stakeholders. Number two, put so much research on it and write it very well in such a way that would capture not only the emotions, but the culture of your target stakeholders.
Okay, there's one question from Jod Gaitsa. Dear Miss Anna, is there any tips for us as a students in giving CSR activities, in developing CSR activity ideas for a startup company?
Okay. Yes, of course. What I've mentioned is you have to do a lot of research. What is the DNA of that startup company? What are the kind of employees? Who are your stakeholders? Who would benefit from the CSR that you're gonna create for that startup company? So you have to put this all together. It matters that you do a lot of brainstorming. It matters that you do a lot of work, and especially it matters that you put a good narrative to it. And when I say good narrative, speaks of the DNA of the stakeholder again, and of course it is written very well. That's why this job is for PR practitioners. That's why this job is for journalism students. That's why this job is for writers and those that would want to help the community. So social works and writers, you have to combine that skill set. You have to have that skill set of wanting to give, and wanting to give, you have to fuel it with your right skill in writing and understanding of PR, understanding of how to put together a great communication, how to put together a good narrative that speaks of the DNA of your stakeholders or your target public.
Okay, sudah cukup jelas? Gaitsa, gimana? Okay, thank you. Anything else, students? We still have 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, if there is no other questions, I think this is to conclude our discussion. So no matter how small or how big your company, you as a company owner and a member of a big corporation have to put CSR as an important part of the operational activities of the companies, because it defines your commitment to the society. I think that will be our conclusion to this session. And I would like to give our biggest thanks to our honorable guest speaker, Miss Anna. Thank you so much. And to Miss Sasa, who has give her time to join this session as well, and to our students for attending our session. We all look forward to see you again in our next next LSPR Omni session. And for more information about the schedule, do not forget to visit our Instagram account. Okay. Let me give the floor to Aurel. Maybe before closing, we would like to have photo session. Aurel?
Yes, thank you so much, Ma'am Ita.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we are back now, and thank you so much, Miss Anna, for the amazing presentations and discussions. Hope everyone understands better about CSR, philanthropies, and public relations area. And now we are at the closing moment of our discussions for today. Let us open our camera and let's take a picture together. Please, everyone, our respective participants and our beloved students, please open your camera. All right, we have 7 slides here, so please hold your smile because we don't know which slide you are in. All right, I will start in 3, 2, 1. Okay, just a moment. Second page. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. All right, just a moment, please. Third page. In 3, 2, 1. Just a moment. Students are opening their camera. All right, I can see someone in the class. All right, just a moment, please hold and stay still in the class. All right, in 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'll continue to the next slide, please. Okay. All right, there you have it. All of slides.
7,000 participants.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much
Thank you so
all. And
much.
I hope to see you again, Anna.
Yeah, likewise. And I hope to visit your country soon.
Oh, yes, please do come.
Would love to be there. Thank you. And thank you for always inviting me, and happy anniversary to LSPR. May God bless you more, and the students. I really hope to see you all doing great things in the future, for public.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Ita. Thank you so much, Miss Anna. And thank you so much, Ma'am Zaza. See you everyone in the next session.
Bye, Aurel.
Thank you, ma'am.
Pamit live ya.
Yeah.